And a TGIF, everyone. Welcome into the California Crown edition of the First Call podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk. Welcome in. Each Friday, we handicap 8 stakes races from around the country. If you're viewing this within the confines of the first California Crown Wager Guide, welcome in. Be sure to check out all of the biographies of the different horses and contenders for the races, all the handicapping analysis, stats, and trends within the Wager Guide. Eddie Olczyk's got you lined up for the big race as well. Millie Ball's got you set up for the turf sprint, and Jeff's got you for the route race on the grass. Jeff, it's a big weekend of Breeders' Cup preps around the country as well.
It's really good racing, and some of these fields, they come up short and with heavy favorites, which you expect because they're bringing the cream of the crop out and for the final preps prior to the Breeders' Cup. But there's still really important racing for those who need to have further evaluation of some of the main contenders that will be racing on Breeders' Cup Day. And who knows, you might find an overbet favorite here that maybe you think might be vulnerable or maybe looking ahead a little bit. So there might be a good gamble or two to find, and we'll try to find them as we look at the races both at Belmont and here at Santa Anita.
This era in which trainers are looking for more time between races, one of the side products of that, one of the unintended consequences, is this final round, quote unquote, round of preps towards the Breeders' Cup. About a third of the horses, maybe 20% of the horses towards the Breeders' Cup are already done, right? They wrapped up at Saratoga or Del Mar or Kentucky Downs, one of those kind of meets, and won't have a final prep. The 2-year-olds still have a lot of work to do, but a lot of the older horses are already finished in the clubhouse, as we like to say in golf parlance. They're awaiting the Breeders' Cup. So, the unintended consequence of that is you don't have as deep of fields in this final round of preps. We used to call it Super Saturday at Belmont Park and a lot of those races. In fact, a lot of the Belmont races like Jockey Club Gold Cup and races like that were actually moved to Saratoga and run farther out from the Breeders' Cup. So this is what we have. We're going to handicap it. We're going to have a good time with it. Let's get started and let everybody see the schedule of races. Jeff and I will handicap over the next hour or half hour or so. For the benefit of those of you on YouTube and on Twitter, X, be sure to like, share this out, comment down in the comment section. That helps us grow the audience for the First Call podcast. And for those of you listening on our traditional audio podcast channels, here are the 8 races Jeff and I are going to handicap. We're just going to take 2 tracks and really focus in on Belmont at the Big A for Saturday. We'll look at the Woodward Stakes, the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, the Vosburgh, and the Pilgrim. To Santa Anita, we'll go on the inaugural California Crown card for the California Crown John Henry Turf. Then we'll look at the Eddie D for Turf Sprinters, the California Crown in the Classic or Dirt Mile division. And speaking of milers, on the turf, we've got the City of Hope Mile. You see that $10 MBS on the graphic? That's a $10 money back special offer, which means if you bet those 3 races, the California Crown Stakes races at Santa Anita on Saturday with First Bet and Express Bet, you'll get up to $10 back in your account if your win bet finishes 2nd or 3rd. So we've got a little insurance to play with on Saturday in the California Crown. Tournament players, a lot going on. The $6,000 high roller California Crown betting challenge is set for Saturday. If 6,000 is a little steep for you, I understand that. $300 could get you into that by winning today's feeder tournament. So the Santa Anita California Crown Betting Championship feeder tournament today with a $3 or $300 entry fee could get you into that big $6,000 main event high roller on Saturday. And then on Sunday, if you're trying to get into the Breeders' Cup Betting Championship, there's a super low ratio qualifier, which means you got a better chance of making the final than a lot of other tournaments. A $1,000 entry fee for that Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge super low ratio qualifier being held Sunday at Santa Anita. That's a look at the tournament scene and the 8 stakes races Jeff and I are about to handicap. A big weekend extends beyond just Saturday. Of course, Sunday there are Breeders' Cup preps. Santa Anita has the Santa Anita Sprint Championship, also the Zenyatta Stakes in the Distaff division. It's Oklahoma Derby Day, my old stomping grounds at Remington Park. And in New York, you've got the Miss Grillo and the Gallant Bloom schedule for Sunday as well. And final leg of the Canadian Triple Crown, the Breeders' Stakes on turf at Woodbine, also coming up on Sunday. So a huge weekend, but Jeff and I are going to focus on our 2 main event tracks that we talked about. Belmont at the Big A, Aqueduct in Queens, and then we'll go to Santa Anita for the California Crown races coming up in just a bit. Now, let's start off talking about the scene in New York this Saturday. 40% chance of rain, some dreary skies in New York today, out of the path of Hurricane Helene. Hopefully those of you who are in the path of that take shelter and stay dry. It could be wet on Saturday in New York. We'll see 40% chance of rain. So a couple of turf stakes. But let's start, Jeff, on the main track. It's the Woodward Stakes. This is a prep for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, perhaps, or the Breeders' Cup Classic. A mile and an eighth here for the Woodward, $400,000 grade 2. Originally a field of 5, but we're going to lose the 5 in here. K Army, the Chilean star, who's 10 for 10. Belmont announced earlier this week that was going to scratch. So just a field of 4 for race 4, the Woodward Stakes. How do you see it?
Well, Skippy Longstocking is the controlling speed, and when he is the controlling speed, he's tough to beat.
Yeah.
And being a son of an exaggerator, if it is a wet track, that certainly won't bother him. Career top number last time out at Charlestown. I think he's kind of a Charlestown, specialist.
He loves those 3 turns.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's going to make the lead inside. And Krupe, I think, has a chance, if they employ the strategy that I hope they do, to sit second here. Let him run out of there. He when he can lay fairly close, he's not slow. They just keep taking him way back and allowing him to settle and then giving him too much to do. But if you look at Krupe, and I think he's very dangerous here, even though I do think Skippy Longstocking is the most logical winner. But Krupe 3 races back won the Suburban. That was a good win at Saratoga. Then he was a distant second and got his head handed to him by Next. No disgrace there. And then he comes back and runs a career top in the Whitney when it rallies to be second behind Loose in the Lead Arthur's Ride. So, I mean, he's, as a son of Curlin, developing now as a 4-year-old. He's only had 17 starts, but his best races have been his recent races. And if he can sit second, maybe he has the push to run down Skippy Longstocking late. I think that's the 2 that I'm looking at, obviously, in a 4-horse race. Not much else you can do with it, but I wouldn't be surprised, even though I do think Skippy Longstocking is 4 to 5 and deserves to be so. I'd give Krupe a chance here. I really think he's got a chance if he can keep within range. Yeah. Don't let Skippy Longstocking get up to 4 or 5 and go 24 and 48 and change, because if you do that, he's not coming back.
Last year in the Discovery at Aqueduct, that's kind of the blueprint race, I thought, for Krupe that might be successful in here. It was only a 5-horse field. They went slow, 49-113, but Carmouche was able to keep the horse within a length and a half, and that's kind of what you're looking at. If Krupe can stay close, then Irad Ortiz may have a shot to run down Skippy Longstocking, but it looks like those 2. Skippy Longstocking, of course, last year, Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, 3rd-place finisher. They've taken a very smart path with this horse throughout his career. He's made $2.9 million by running in the right spots. This is another right spot for him at a mile and an eighth. Short run to the clubhouse turn, small field inside. He gets everything his way once again, but I would think he's back in the dirt mile. They won't try to go the mile and a quarter, whereas Krupe looks like a horse who, instead of prepping for the dirt mile, would be headed towards the Classic if he can run a good race. He looks more like a true 10 furlong horse than, say, Skippy Longstocking. But at 9 furlongs, with the way this race shakes out, you'd have to say advantage Skippy Longstocking here as these 2 try to get their final Breeders' Cup preps. Let's go to the Turf Classic next. Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, named for the late great turf rider from Daily Racing Form fame. The Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, a mile and a half on the grass. And this is a spot where we've seen in the past she's awfully good, and she's going to try to do it again. Warlike Goddess. She's a 2-time winner of the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, and she's going for a 3-peat. Let's go back and take a look at her victory in this race a year ago.
Stretch. It is So High trying to pull off a huge upset here. So High is the leader. Warlike Goddess is now gobbling up the ground on the outside, and here she comes now, and Warlike Goddess has taken over the lead with a 16th of the finish. The 6-year-old daughter of English Channel, Warlike Goddess, wins the Grade 1 Joe Hirsch Turf Classic. Soldier Rising came from last to get second.
That was on yielding turf. She won it the year before on good turf. We expect, given the ground, if not really soft conditions on Saturday for this race. Jeff, does she make it 3 in a row?
I think she does. The pace situation is always an issue when you have a horse like Warlike Goddess who has to run like that. She's not the kind of mare that you want to lay close to the pace. You want to let her saddle and get her rhythm and then make that one run. But sometimes she gets into races where the pace is slow, as what happened in the Flower Bowl, and she got beat that day at 6-5. But this is a race that has speed. I mean, anytime you have Get Smoking in the race, you're going to have speed. And Far Bridge, who won the Sword Dancer, he went 50-4, won 17-1, and was able to steal the race there. That's not going to happen here. Although he is a horse that doesn't necessarily need the lead to win, but I do think they'll go quick enough for Warlike Goddess to settle. And obviously, it's hard to dispute 2 for 2 over the course. And I don't know if she's quite as good now at age 7 as she used to be, but she's not that far removed. And I think this is the kind of race that if she is going to be a legitimate major player on Breeders' Cup Day, this is the kind of race she's supposed to win. No excuses. Obviously, short price, number 4, Warlike Goddess. I'm looking forward to seeing this Belmont trained mare who's been around forever, it seems like. And it would be nice to see her continue her winning ways.
You mentioned Get Smoking, wire-to-wire winner of the United Nations, has the rail in here. Far Bridge, you mentioned, went wire-to-wire to win the Sword Dancer. Silver Knot went wire-to-wire to win the Bowling Green. So obviously there are horses who have had a lot of success, even at 1.5 miles up towards the front of the pack in this spot. Warlike Goddess obviously wants them to set the table and see if Junior Alvarado can't time the move and knock him down again. She gets a 3-pound weight allowance as the mare going against the Colts in here. I thought Silver Knot with a little give in the turf course should move up. Of course, anytime you get that international pedigree and experience. And I thought the one race she ran on good turf in the Man of War was the best race she's run in the U.S. And buyer-wise, it was at 106. So with some give in the ground, this should give Silver Knot his best chance to put his best feet forward in here. To me, it comes down to Silver Knot early, Warlike Goddess late. It's got to be one of those two to me.
I think so. I think you got it right there.
Let's go next to the Vosburgh Grade 3 Sprint Stakes. This Vosburgh used to be a Grade 1, the prep leading into the Breeders' Cup amongst the New York Sprinters. And it used to be fun because the New York Sprinters then would go on to the Breeders' Cup with all this ballyhoo and get beat back in the early days of the Breeders' Cup in the 80s or the 90s. The Vosburgh lost a little bit of its luster in terms of grade. It's had some good horses, though, in recent years come back through it. This edition doesn't look particularly strong, though. When you look at the field in here, Baby Yoda, Dean Delivers, Mufasa. There's some horses who just haven't been up at the Grade 1 level, but are contenders in this particular spot. It's not a Grade 1, it's a Grade 3, so it doesn't play like your father's Vosburgh Stakes. This year, it looks a lot like a Grade 3. And Jeff, there's a horse we're both on in here named Scotland, who looks like the right horse at the right time. His last was really good at Saratoga, wasn't it?
I really think that he is advancing. Here's a horse that started out as a sprinter and had some very, very fast races as a young horse to start his career. Mm-hmm. And then they tried him in the Curlin at Saratoga going 1 mile and 1/8. He made the mistake, Jeremy, of actually winning that race because because now they're convinced he's a router. And he really, this is what he wants to do. And you mentioned that at 7 furlongs in his most recent start, granted it was just an allowance race, but visually, he could not have looked any better. And the 98 buyer number that he earned puts him right there. And he's had some time off. Now, he missed a month of training. Something must have happened to him. But since then, he's had 4 really solid works. I don't think it was anything major that put him on the sidelines. And now he's fresh. He's dangerous. Got that terrific stalking style going 7/8 where he can be on the lead, but he doesn't have to. And at 7-2 on the morning line, this is a horse that I'm going to gamble on. I mean, there's some of these races where, you can pick the winner, but there's not a lot of value. But if I get 7-2 in Scotland, based on the kind of race that I project him to run here in this race, I'll take it. I think he's a good thing.
He's run poorly on sloppy tracks twice, but that was the Travers and the Pennsylvania Derby where he made the lead and then backed up. So he may not dislike the mud as much as he disliked running Grade 1 company going long-distance route races. Comedy Town, on the other hand, is 2 wins on an off track in the last 3. Goes for 4 wins in a row for trainer Safi Joseph Jr. That one has also run some pretty big numbers, including 100 buyer in the Smile Sprint. Comedy Town versus Scotland, maybe, in the Vosburgh Stakes. Jeff and I are both headed to Scotland on this one. Let's take a look at his last race.
Scotland 45-3 at the top of the stretch, and Scotland trying to sprint away. Accretive takes up the chase in second. On the far outside, Castle Chaos in the black. They're inside the 8th pole, and Scotland goes on very well. It's Scotland by 4, by 5 with a 16th to go. Accretive is trying his best, but no match for Scotland. Junior Alvarado puts the brakes on Scotland, who overwhelmed them. Accretive was second. Then it was Castle Chaos third and running.
So that is Scotland, top pick for Jeff and I both in the Grade 3 Vosburgh Stakes. That's race number 9. Belmont at the Big A on Saturday. Final stakes on the card Saturday at Belmont at Aqueduct will be the Pilgrim Stakes, race number 11 on the card. These are 2-year-old turfers going towards the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, you would assume, here at a mile and a 16th. Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz have won this race 3 years in a row. They go for a Fort Pete, but they've got Noble Confessor, a 2-time dirt horse who's disappointed, trying turf for the first time. You would think Zulu Kingdom's going to be a solid favorite in here for Chad Brown.
He got a lovely trip, though, when he won the With Anticipation. I'm not taking that against him or holding that against him. I mean, good horses make good trips, but he sat on the inside. He scraped paint into the stretch or scraped the hedge and got through in the inside and won by a neck. It was life and death. And I thought, it was a good race. He showed a lot of quality. He's 2 for 2 now, but not to a point where I think he's so much better than the others that you take a short price. When I handicap these races, first of all, the one thing I don't look at are numbers, because numbers are usually pace dependent, and sometimes you get slow paces and you can't really earn a good number because you're going too slow the first part. But the other thing is, you have horses here that are developing and various stages of development. Some horses will come up to hand and don't really have that much more upside. Other horses go into a race, they don't know what they're doing, they win, and the next time they figure it out and they improve a ton. And that's what I look. That's why I have to really watch the races here. I watched all of these maiden wins, all of these races. Forget about the numbers. I just wanted to find the horse that impressed me the most. Which horse do I think has the most room for improvement, and which horse has that turn of foot, that acceleration that you really need in a race like this? And I think I found one at a big price. That's number 6, Smooth Breeze, at 12 to 1. He won his debut. That was good. He really quickened in the final 16th of a mile like a good horse. I mean, he didn't have a clear run. He had to angle out. And when he put his head down, he went, and he only got a 59 buyer number. I said, boy, I wish I could buy a horse with a 59 number that's that good. But he's 12 to 1 in the morning line. Beautifully bred. He's by more than ready. He should love the grass. Got no play. He was 12 to 1 because he probably didn't show anything on the dirt and probably wasn't asked much. And for all I know is he ran in on him because I'm not sure how much they expected. But with that race under his belt and the expected improvement that I think he's going to show at 12 to 1, Smooth Breeze, I think, is the gamble in this race. And again, you got to go back and watch that race to really appreciate how much the best he was.
A mile to go. Following him is the Philly National Archive there at the top of the stretch. And Ori has emerged with a narrow lead. Deemer on the outside. At the rail, it's still Trinity River fighting on. And in behind them, Smooth Breeze angles out late, coming to the 16th pole. Deemer's gray head is in front. Along the inside, a very game Trinity River, and a late surge from Smooth Breeze. Here's the line. Smooth Breeze got him. Smooth Breeze, a determined, ferocious late kick.
That's what you're talking about with the turn of foot. One aside, you talk about the numbers and looking at horses like this. One thing I don't know if people realize with a lot of the commercial speed figures and even some of the performance figures, figure history, a horse's figure history is a big part of how they make the numbers. They're looking at the average numbers of all the horses in the race and what they typically run so that you don't have a horse who's usually running in the 60s suddenly running second and getting an 85. They try to use the figure histories to be a predictive point of how fast the field is. You don't have a figure history with a lot of these first-time, second-time starters like that to work off of. So they can miss on a maiden field, right? It's not just they have the raw time to work with, but they don't have the figure histories of the horses in the field that are as developed as they are with some of the more experienced horses. So that's why a lot of times you're going to see massive development from horses and big jumps in figures, first start to second start, because now you're starting to get a little bit more of a figure history to work with some of these runners. But as Jeff said, don't look at the 59 buyer speed figure for Smooth Breeze. Look at that turn of foot that you saw in the final 70 yards of that win at Saratoga. Smooth Breeze, race number 11, Jeff's pick in the Pilgrim Stakes at Belmont at the Big A. We turn our attention now on the First Call podcast to the inaugural California Crown, run Saturday at Santa Anita Park. 3 big stakes races under the California Crown moniker, 5 stakes races in all on the program. And we've got 5 million first rewards points that you can hit and split throughout the card on Saturday when you play with First Bet and Express Bet on Santa Anita. There's a $1 million point hit and split on the early pick 5 on the card. There is a $2 million hit and split that comes up on the all stakes Stakes Pick 5. If you can connect all 5 stakes winners on Saturday, you'll split your share of 2 million first rewards points in that hit and split. And there's also a 2-day wager between the California Crown and Sunday's Zenyatta Stakes, a 2-day daily double where there are also 2 million first rewards points in a hit and split. So a lot of different gambling options for you on Saturday at Santa Anita. Be sure to check santanita.com and news.first.com for all your updated information on the California Crown, as well as the California Crown First Wager Guide. At Santa Anita on Saturday, we are going to handicap the California Crown John Henry Turf coming up first in race number 7. We'll follow it with the Eddie D in race number 8, the California Crown main event, $1 million race in the 9th, and the City of Hope Mile wraps things up in race number 10. And again, tournament players, you got the $6,000 California Crown betting challenge coming up on Saturday if you're into the high roller tournament scene. $10 money back special offered on those 3 California Crown races. That means if your win bet finishes second or third and you bet with First Bet and Express Bet, you'll get up to $10 back in your account in the form of wagering credits. Jeff Siegel, let's handicap now the California Crown John Henry Turf, named after the great grass runner John Henry. He was a great dirt runner. He ran on anything. 1.25 miles, they'll start down the hill here at Santa Anita, then make a lap of the course proper. How do you see this group of veterans that are very familiar with one another?
Well, that's the thing is, I mean, this is a group that seems to take turns. You can make a case if you had to draw a name out of a hat and say, okay, make a case for this horse. You could. I mean, I've got Cabo Spirit at 30-1, the least likely as far as I'm concerned in the race. But, you know, if you drew him and you had to make a case for him, well, the inside speed, no one's going to go with him. You might get loose in the lead. And, you know, even though he hasn't won a race in 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is, you know, he might get loose. So, I mean, you can make a case for him. But I ended up trying to handicap this race using just 3 factors. Number one, who knows how to win races? Who wins the close ones? And Gold Phoenix can do that. Number 2 is who has proven form over the course, and that's Gold Phoenix. He's won first or second, 6 out of 13 starts with 2/3, so he's generally there. And the third thing is who is pace dependent and who isn't. And Gold Phoenix he's a closer, but he doesn't have to be that far back. So if the race is really crawling, then he can lay somewhere, you know, in the middle. And I don't know whether I made him 7-2 morning line favorite. I don't know whether he's a great gamble because they're all kind of taking turns, but he does check the boxes, so to speak. And I think this is just his third start off, a bit of a layoff. I think it'll be his best start. The one that I really wanted to like, Jeremy, was Balnikoff, but here's the problem with Balnikoff. He's stuck way outside, which you don't really want to be coming down that dog leg, so he's not going to get early position. Number 2 is that he's 0 for 8 lifetime at Santa Anita, so I'm not so sure he's not a lot better somewhere else than he is at Santa Anita. I think that might be the problem with him. He doesn't like the course, and then he doesn't really have any tactical speed, so he is pacing. I think Balnikoff, given a different set of circumstances, you know, maybe a better post, maybe more pace, maybe somewhere other than Santa Anita, would win this race. But I can't go there, although I do expect him to hit the board. So I'm stuck with the other D'Amato, Gold Phoenix. I think there's a possibility that if you look at these fields, you've got a horse like Masterpiece who hasn't been winning, but could. He's going to trip, and Hernandez rides him back. He's our best rider. Dicey Mochara is kind of a grinder. Don't think he'll win, but he could hit the board. It's that kind of race. If you needed the gun to my head, if you needed to make it maybe a pick, I'll go with Gold Phoenix. But, you know, if I'm playing pick sixes, I'm spreading.
Let's take a look at Gold Phoenix winning last time out at Del Mar.
Dicey Mochara in front. Masterpiece turning the pressure on now. Gold Phoenix along the inside. Rock Emperor in the goal down the center of the track, and Balnikoff getting involved late. They come for home. Dicey Mochara's all heart hanging on. Dicey Mochara, Gold Phoenix down at the rail. Gold Phoenix gonna get him. Gold Phoenix got up to win it. Dicey Mochara second. Balnikoff.
Those names sounded familiar. They're all back in the former program as you look at this race, and it was a blanket finish that day. So if you lack confidence in this race, you're probably in the proper mind frame, right? This is a very difficult race to separate them on. You mentioned Balnikoff. I do want to say he is eligible for a $2.5 million bonus if he can win this race and then go on to win the Pegasus World Cup Turf in January, part of the California Crown Turf bonus. He won the first leg of that series back on Preakness Day when he won the Dinner Party Stakes at Keeneland. So if you say, well, look, Balnikoffs are at the Preakness Stakes at Pimlico, not at Keeneland, of course. Balnikoff, though, you say maybe not a mile and a quarter horse. He might be a little bit better shorter, but he's chasing some of that cash, right? And rightfully so. He's run some pretty good races up to a mile and an eighth, and he wasn't beaten far in that Delmar handicap at a mile and 3/8. It just might not be his absolute best trip. But the fact that you could throw a blanket all over these and that they've taken turns beating each other, I just went completely another direction. And I went with number 3 in here, Dive and Propos. This is a horse for Phil D'Amato, 2 wins and 3 starts here in the U.S. Just got beat 3/4 of length in the 1 defeat. French import, we're going to find out. I mean, should definitely be successful over a mile and a quarter. Has already won at the trip over the course at Santa Anita back in June. I'm just going with a fresh face, good post position in here in the 3-hole. Antonio Frazu's having a really good year in the saddle. So give me the 3 in here and a little bit of an upset, not a massive confidence play. I don't know how you come up with a confidence play in this one, Jeff.
No, I mean, I looked at that horse quite closely. He didn't quite have the proven form, but he's only had 10 starts. He's won 4 races. He's got enough tactical speed. He's another horse that checks boxes. Now, I made him 6-1. I would gamble on him at 6-1.
Right.
I would, because he's going to draft into a great spot, and he's a progressive horse with further improvement in him. 1 for 1 over the course. I mean, he's another one. The only thing he hasn't done is won a race like this. But if he had won a race like this, he wouldn't be 6-1. He'd be 2-1. So I see where you're coming from on
buy
that.
now. Buy now is what you're saying. Because if he wins this race, you won't get 6-1 again.
He may have more upside than some of the horses who've been knocking around and basically are what they are. Right. I mean, they are what they are, and Divine Propos might be better than what he is. So why not?
Sometimes you just call it a default pick as a public handicapper. You're looking for somebody else, and he was the best of the others, the way I handicapped the race. So we'll see how it shakes out. Now, let's go to race number 8 next up. It's the downhill turf sprinters in the Eddie D Stakes, California Crown Eddie D, named for the Hall of Fame legendary jockey, my favorite rider of all time, because anybody who follows my handicapping knows I love the closers. We live and die with them, and nobody was better on a late running horse than the Hall of Famer Eddie Della. Who say so? The Eddie D Stakes down the hill. We expect a tight finish in this one, as you usually do in these turf sprints. The shipper in here gets all the attention, Jeff. Big Invasion. What do you make of this one for Christophe Clement? We saw him at Santa Anita last year run a bang-up race, hitting the board in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. That was on the proper course, the regular circuit. They're back going down the hill for the Eddie D. So while he's been to Santa Anita before, he's never run down the hill. This will be some new turf, if you will, for Big Invasion.
It's a different course, different everything, running on the flat for the hillside course. My favorite Eddie D story before I try to make a selection in this grass grab bag. We had a horse named Prize, of course, and we ran him in the Jockey Club Gold Cup against Easy Goer, thinking because we had just beaten Sunday Silence at Santa Anita, at Hollywood in the swaps, that if we beat Easy Goer, we had a chance to be, champion 3-year-old, even though we didn't run in the Triple Crown. So we went against Easy Goer, and it was one of those, big sandy courses at Belmont, and we got beat maybe 35 lengths in that race. And Easy Goer won by a pole. So we were all kind of disappointed. And then we went back to the barn to make sure the horse, had pulled up well. And Eddie D, who had ridden him, said, "Don't worry about this race at all. Don't worry about it. Because I pulled him up on the clubhouse turn. He couldn't handle the sand. Forget about it. Just put him on the grass next time out. We can win. He'd be a better grass horse anyway." So I'm standing there, I'm saying, well, that's good enough for me. Anyway, next start, he wins the Breeders' Cup Turf. First time ever on grass. Thank you, Eddie D, for that.
Yes.
And I always thought Eddie D would be a great trainer, but he didn't really want to do that. But he could have been if he wanted to. That's how sharp he was. Anyway, so this race, I looked at Big Invasion, and you look at it, he's good enough to win this race if he handles the course. He doesn't have any tactical speed. You really have to kind of settle and make a run. Now, deep closers can win down the hill, but 2 things have to happen. They have to have pace up front, a lot of it, and then they have to get lucky because you know how that scramble crossing down the dirt, horses fan out. You can't get fanned out too wide. But on the other hand, if you sit in there and hope it opens up, sometimes it doesn't open up. So I don't know whether it's a great gamble, but in looking at that race, I remember his race in the Breeders' Cup Sprint here, really, really good. Again, apples and oranges regarding the course, flat course versus the hillside. But he's in good form. I mentioned, sometimes I didn't mention the jockey, but first time Pratt has always been a big play for me. You know what I'm saying? And even though, he hasn't ridden this horse, you have to expect that he's going to run better for Pratt than anybody else. And so and I think Flavien knows the course, and I think he'll try to drop over, hopefully all the speed horses, cheap speed horses like a horse like Noble Reflection, who can't win, but he can make a pace fast. I hope they'd all stay in, and it allows Big Invasion to have his best chance to win. Johnny Padres is the same way. He is a deep closing horse who pace dependent, but man, if he can get fractions to run at, Johnny Padres can absolutely be dangerous in the final furlong. He's so much improved. He's not quite as fast as Big Invasion is on numbers, but he's very, very good. And if those of you who don't remember Johnny Padres, he was a winning pitcher in the 1955 World Series for the Dodgers. He played for the Los Angeles Dodgers when they played in the Coliseum. And Johnny Padres was most noted for leaving early at the games, during the games when he knew he wasn't going to pitch, to go to Hollywood Park 5 miles away to catch the last race of the day. He told Olsen, "I'm gone. I like something in the ninth." Or the eighth. So that's why his horse is named after him. No horse has been better, more appropriately named than Johnny Padres as a racehorse. Johnny loved to play. Him and Don Zimmer were just, I say this affectionately, they were degenerates. I love them.
I used to play with Johnny Padres in an old video game when I was a kid. Earl Weaver Baseball on the computer. Johnny Padres, Don Newcomb. You had a lot of old teams on there, on the old Dodgers teams. So, Johnny Padres. He's also coming out of the Green Flash, where he just narrowly missed a Motorius, who will skip this race, but expect Motorius probably to be one of the horses for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. The Green Flash has been a very predictive and positive race towards this Eddie D over the years. One of the stats you can find when you check things out in that first wager guide for the California Crown Day. Other thing, too, of stats in there of note, Flavien Prat, the most successful jockey in Santa Anita downhill turf sprints going back the last several years. Of course, he's based in New York now much of the year, leading jockey in terms of stakes wins this year at Saratoga. But Prat rides the downhill turf course better than anyone. He's like 22% winner, according to our BetMix stats in that wager guide. He teams, like you said, with Big Invasion for the first time. And, of course, Big Invasion, he doesn't need a whole lot of help at this point because he's coming off a win in the Harvey Pack.
Followed by Charging. Our Shot is on the outside. Arzak down at the rail has 6 to make up, starting to mount his bid. And getting to the outside of the course is Arzak. And Big Invasion is widest of all. Final Furlong Super Quest has collared high front. They're head and head for the lead. In behind horses, Big Invasion. Big Invasion is coming with a fierce run, and that's the Big Invasion we know. Running down Our Shot, Super Quest was third in the...
We know he loves Saratoga, and he got that homecoming win last time. We'll see if that translates back to Santa Anita. He's been here before, Breeders' Cup style, like we said. It's whether or not Big Invasion handles the downhill turf course. That's not a question with number 2, First Piece, and that's why I ended up with First Piece. Down the hill, this horse has 2 wins, 3 seconds from 5 starts. Now, he'll turn back in distance. Post number 2, Mark Glatt, Mike Smith teaming up here. First Piece, a horse for course, horse for this particular downhill course, I think. And I like the fact that he's cutting back in distance. You say, well, how do you know the horse will do well cutting back in distance? The best predictor is past form, I think, when it comes to things like that. This horse won the John Shear, turning back from a mile to 6.5 down the hill here. He ran second beat and a half in the Siren Lure, doing the exact same thing, cutting back in distance, going long to short. So First Piece, route the sprint, runs well, loves this downhill turf course. I'm going to take Mike Smith here with First Piece, and that will be my pick in the Eddie D Stakes. He's got some tactical speed. I don't think he's going to be coming from as far out of it as Johnny Padres will down on the rail inside of him. So hopefully Mike Smith can work out a trip there, Jeff.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, he's running against Johnny Padres. They're like the same horse, although
right.
First Piece has got more tactical speed, but essentially from a quality standpoint, they're almost, again, who gets the trip? That's the main thing. They're both capable of winning. So we'll see what happens in a typical grass grab bag down the hill. Love the hillside course races. I know fans love them too because they're so exciting and they all kind of come together in the final furlong, and then you got a chance.
For more on that California Crown Eddie D Stakes, again, be sure to check out the first California Crown Wager Guide, where Millie Ball has her video analysis, her strategies, and all the stats and trends for that race in the Wager Guide. Next up, we go to the main event. $1 million for the inaugural running of the California Crown. Field of 7 has entered. We expect number 7, Indispensable, to opt to run at Remington Park in Sunday's Oklahoma Derby. So maybe 6 will start. We'll wait for the official word on that in terms of scratches, but I do expect the 7, Indispensable, to come out of the California Crown. National Treasure, the horse who already this year has won the Met Mile. He's already won the Pegasus World Cup. And in the Pegasus World Cup, he was nose and nose to the wire with Senor Buscador. They get a rematch in here, Jeff, and what is turned out to be a pretty quality field. And when you take the 3-year-old Muth and bring him in, it adds some intrigue to this race, because the 3-year-olds don't take on older horses too much in American racing these days, except when they get to the Breeders' Cup. So for this to happen a race early gives us a little bit of a jolt of electricity, I'd say, in the interest. Let's see how good Muth is.
We're going to find out for sure. And when I did the morning line here, I was of the thought that Muth would be favored. And then I looked at the form and I said, I don't see that. I'm not saying he can't win. In fact, I think he will win. But National Treasure, he has some powerhouse races against, older horses. He's fast on figures. He's had 3 of his last 4 starts were triple-digit buyer races. Muth has never earned a triple-digit buyer. So you look at the form and you'd say that National Treasure is probably the controlling speed, and Muth is going to stalk him. It's kind of a blackboard race. The way Muth has been training, though, I know he hasn't beaten older horses, nor has he ever run against them, but he's a developing colt, and this was a terrific work. That colt on the inside is Ultra Power. He's a curling out of Unique Bella, and he won his last start with a triple-digit buyer number. He is a really fast horse, and Muth is laughing at him here. Really. I mean, he's just toying with him. And he's going to never really asked at all. They're not going fast because the track was dead this day, dull. But now Muth is being chirped to just a little bit. The colt on the inside is being asked to keep up, can't do it. And Muth just cruises the wire. And I'm thinking that I'm looking at the same type of finish I'm going to see in the California Crown, whereas the role of Ultra Power is going to be played by National Treasure. He's going to sit right off a National Treasure, theoretically, and then he's going to have his chance at the top 6 to go by, and I'm expecting him to go by. But he may not go by because National Treasure is good when he's good, and he's training really well too. I don't see the stalkers or the closers having much chance, because I don't think these two are going to hook up, because I don't think Bob Baffert's going to allow that. He's going to choreograph this race, and he's going to tell Juan Hernandez Muth, you don't go after that horse to the quarter pole, and then you can go after him. If you can beat him, great. If you can't, you can't. But I don't want you dueling him into defeat and spoiling both horses' chances. This is $1 million race. I'd like to win it. So I think that's the way the blackboard plays up. And if Muth progressive steps forward and produces a career top number, which I think he will, then I think he can.
I looked at the Brisk Pass performances for this race because of exactly what you're talking about. The way it shakes out, it looks like National Treasure on the blackboard, and then will Muth be strong enough to push by? And when I looked at the Brisk late pace figures, it's no contest. Muth does have much better late pace figures than what we've seen out of National Treasure. And yet still, I ended up picking National Treasure in here. And I think I might end up with it's just the whole lone speed thing. I don't ever want to get back an advantage like that with a really good quality horse, right? A lot of times you'll take lone speed in a cheap claiming race. The horse just gets out there and gets comfortable. They tend not to give back their advantage. But at 1 1/8, this is a real concern whether or not National Treasure at 1 1/8 can beat a top-class horse like Muth, or maybe even Senor Buscador, who's going to get into gear late. Senor Buscador probably runs out of racetrack here, right? I mean, typically Santa Anita at 1 1/8 like this wouldn't be begging for a deep closer like him, but you could certainly see him making a nice run, propelling him forward to the 1 1/4 at Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup Classic. pick. As for the two Bafferts in here, maybe they're not classic horses, and they're both dirt mile prospects. Muth maybe would go towards the classic, but we've never seen him be on a mile and an eighth to this point, winner of the Arkansas Derby. He's by good magic out of an Uncle Mo mare. They probably would go on to the classic if they were able to run successfully in this race, but National Treasure almost certainly would go to the dirt mile out of this, you would have to think, as last year in the dirt mile, he took right to the wire in that exciting nose photo finish with the great champion Cody's Wish. So you think maybe they're in this together. I mean, they're against each other, but they go their separate ways after this point forward, I would guess, with those two Bafferts.
Yeah, Baffert said that yesterday in an interview that I don't even think has been aired yet, but he expects National Treasure to run in the mile and Muth to run in the classic if Muth performs at this distance against this level of horse up to what his expectations are. And that's what I'm saying is I think Muth will sit and then try to go by. National Treasure will try to win this race and then back up. If National Treasure had won the mile last year, then maybe they would have gotten creative, but he still would like to win a Breeders' Cup race, and his best chance will be the mile. So, but I do think that's the best. I look at Senor Buscador, and I think under certain circumstances, he might have a much better chance. Whereas, let's say, for example, National Treasure and Muth were trained by two different people, then they might be more competitive up front. And over a racetrack that maybe doesn't quite favor the closers. It's not impossible to stalk and sit second or third or fourth and win, but I don't want to come from too far back on this track.
Yeah, it just looks like those two 1-2 in some form or fashion here. We'll see how it shakes out. If you want more on this race, be sure to check out the California Crown Wager Guide from First. Our man Eddie Olczyk. Eddie O's got you with the classic analysis for the California Classic, plus our whole team and pool of handicappers across the First family of racetracks and properties, all in the handicappers consensus grid, have their top four finishers for the California Classic. So be sure to check that out. I think about 20 handicappers in all giving their opinion of the big race. It's Muth trying to run down National Treasure. That's the way Jeff and I both see the inaugural California Crown. That is our Express Bet Race of the Week. Be sure to check that out. Sign up for the email newsletter for First Bet and Express Bet each week and get that sent into your email inbox. I'll tell you, I don't try to make hay and value out of this race. I'm going to try to get a daily double from my pick in the seventh race, the Eddie D, into this race and try to build out some value that way. We've got a minor upset pick there with the two horse in the seventh race. So we'll try to connect some daily doubles with two logical horses there in our race of the week, which produced an $870 return last week. So it's been a really good year in the race of the week space. Let's go to our final race of the California Crown Day card at Santa Anita. 10th on the card. This is not your typical get out race. These aren't Calbred maiden claimers in the final race on the card. We've got the City of Hope Mile Grade 2 company. And Jeff, one of California's top Breeders' Cup prospects in all in this race, Johannes. He has been just a daisy cutter on the turf so far this year. Do you think he keeps it rolling?
Well, he's a perfect 5 for 5 over the Santa Anita turf course. I see no reason why he won't. Beautifully drawn, very favorable pace scenario for him. Training solidly on the dirt. He's a horse that just does what he's asked. I just think that he's going to get a great trip and prevail as always. He always puts himself in the right position, and he always explodes from the quarter pole to the wire. He's really hard to beat. In doing the morning line, which, by the way, for my protection, I want to disclose, and I had to do this last Tuesday, so I didn't really have a lot of time. And they told me they needed it Tuesday, about the Monday night. I said, "Oh, yeah, okay, I'll do the. No, we need the whole card. Oh, thanks a lot for telling me." So I ended up making Trickery 8-1. I think he's better than that, honestly. If I could do it over again, I'd probably drop him to 5 because he's got tactical speed, unproven against these older horses, but his rising numbers tell me that he might be this good. I think he could be second, and I think Du Jour from that rail post is going to get a good ground-saving trip. He's another horse that is better at Santa Anita than anywhere else. So if you're playing this race, I mean, Johannes over Du Jour, Johannes over Trickery. I think that's pretty much it as far as I'm concerned. Again, these are high-quality horses that are in good form. Du Jour's form at Del Mar looks a little stale, but he's better than that. He didn't get good trips there. I know he likes it here. So and he's training really well. So 3/1, 3/6. That's how I'll play it. Obviously, Johannes at 4-5 in the morning line. You can single him if you want to play in the pick six or something. But if you're not in that, then that's the way to play the exactas and trifectas, I think.
If he runs like he did in the Eddie Reed, there's no hope for the others in the City of Hope.
Top of the lane, and Balladeer tries to find more on the lead, but Johannes comes breathing down his neck in second. De Jure is on the outside, and Masterpiece the Grey is still in with a shot too. Homeward bound, and Johannes now grabs the lead and sets sails for home. Johannes is the one to beat. Nobody can beat him right now, though. Coming late is Dicey Mochera, but Johannes too stylish, and Johannes and Umberto Rispoli win the Eddie Reed very impressively.
Continue that run now to Santa Anita, which is actually his better venue than Del Mar. So
I prefer.
yeah, that's hard to go against there. Johannes, top pick for both of us in this City of Hope mile. That's going to wrap up our handicapping, not only for the California Crown, but all of our races here on the First Call Podcast. You can join us each and every Friday on the First Call Podcast when we handicap weekend stakes races, and we recap all the action on Tuesdays with the It's Official podcast. So be sure to check that out. Jeff and I have hot takes on what we saw over the previous days and issues going on in horse racing. So be sure to check that out each and every Tuesday. You can get that on X, on YouTube, and throughout the different websites with First Bet and Express Bet. So be sure to check that out. It's Official on Tuesday, and the First Call Podcast each and every Friday. Jeff, you've got a fun weekend right there in your backyard. I'll give you the final word this week.
Well, yeah, great racing here. Full card. We'll have an earlier first post time at 12:30. So top to bottom, a really, really good, enjoyable day of racing here. But of course, we'll also be watching all the good races around the country as well. Really a major stepping stone to the Breeders' Cup. We'll see who can step up and become one of the favorites and hit that championship day card at Del Mar in peak form. So good gambling and good luck to everybody, and enjoy the races.
Have a great weekend, everybody.